In this tutorial, I'm going to teach you how to create a database and connect it with your web form. So we'll start the new website, empty website. I'm going to call this as DBLab and press OK. So you have an empty website with only web config file. First, we will create a database. To create the database, right click on the project, select add new item, and we are going to use the built-in database, which is SQL Server. So we choose SQL Server database, and let's give a name for this database. I'm going to call this as eCompany. I'll add this. So it will ask you to create a app data folder. So press yes. So this will create a eCompany database MDF, and if you check on this, we have a database. So if you see this connection is not established, when you refresh, this connection will be established. Our database now doesn't have any tables. We want to create two tables. One is department, another one is employee. So right click on the tables, add new table, and this will show you the table design. So we have this table which has the name, what data type. So the name is the attribute name, data type, whether they need to allow null value or not, and what is the default value. And the first column shows whether this key is a primary key or not. Now let's create the first column is a department ID. I just leave it as integer, and the second column I'm going to call it as department name, and this one we are going to make it as a varchar 50, and we don't want any null values for the department name, so remove the allow nulls. And for the department ID, I want the ID to be increment automatically. So in the department, select the department ID, and in the properties you can see the identity specification, make the is identity as true. So when you make the is identity true, then it will be auto increment. So it starts from 1 and each time it will increase 1. And I'm going to give the name for the table as departments. So remove the name table and call it as departments. And once we have done, we update this to the database. So we update our database and click on the update database. Once you see this successfully updated, and when you refresh your connection, you should see the department tables there. And to add a rows to this department table, right click and select show table data. Department ID is an auto increment field, so we cannot enter anything, and we'll enter the name for the department: IT, civil, mechanical, business. So let's have 4 departments, and let's refresh this and close the design view. I'm going to create another table, and this is going to be employee table. So let's have a employees, and each employee is going to have a employee ID, which will be a varchar n char of 4. Each one will be 4 characters. That will be, it's not null. And employee will have a first name, so we got give it as a varchar. Last name again, and each employee has a hiring date, and the column I'm going to give it as date time, and he will have a department ID which is integer, and salary which is going to be a money, and I'm also going to add two new fields, username and password. So this is help them to log into the website. So these are the columns we are going to have for this employee, and for the ID I'm going to make this ID as a is identity true. That means it will be automatically increase by 1, and let's update this database. Update the database. So once it is updated successfully, if you refresh, you should see employee here, and let's add some data. So show table data, and I'm going to add one ID hiring date. So this is based on your system date format, 23 1999. So it's date month year here, and department ID I'm going to give as 1, salary is 10,000, and username is ID, and password is pass123, and I'm going to create another user. So let's get John Anthony. So 2000, department 2, salary is 12,000, and let's just enter some details. Save this, and let's close this too. So now I have two tables. One is department, other one is employee. Now when you want to access these tables with our web form, we need to create some connections. So I'm going to create some data set for this. So let's right click on the project, add, and this time I'm going to create add new item. We are going to create some data set, and let's call this data set as DS E company, and add it. So it asks you whether it create a app code folder. Yes. So we have two folder now. One is app data, another one is app code, and this is the design view of your data set. I'm going to create a table adapter for our department table. So right click, add table adapter, and the database we are going to connect is eCompany MDF. Press next, and it asks whether need to create a connection string. Say yes, press next, and we are going to use a SQL statement. Next. So from this window you can type your statement, select star from departments, or you can also use the query builder to do this. So you can press the query builder. So it asks you what are the tables you want to access. For now I'm going to access only the department table. and let's close this. And I want all the columns in the department table, so select asterisk. So it writes the query for you and press OK. If you want to check your query whether it's correct or not, you can try to execute your query, and this should give you all the values in your department table. Now press OK and press next. Now we have three options. One is fill data, which creates a method that takes the data table and execute the SQL, which I don't want. I just want the table adapter to return the data which is from our select statement. Instead of get data is our method name. Instead of having get data, I can rename this as get department data, which is more meaningful. And I also would like to create methods to insert, update and delete the data to our table. So just I will leave this checked and uncheck the first one and press next button, and it's generated all the statements for us. And when you press finish, it should create a department table adapter. Let's create another table adapter, and this time we are going to use the employee. And if you have noticed, last time we don't have this connection string, so it started with the database. Now we already have a connection string, so we can use this connection string. Next, same way, use SQL statement, and I'm going to use the query builder to build the query. And this time I'm going to use the employee table, add the employee table, and I want all the values in the employee table, and I'm going to press next. I don't want the fill a data table, I just want the return value and give a name for this. So this is going to give us the employee information. So get employee data, and I want to create insert, update and delete methods. Press next, finish. So now we have two table adapters, one for department, other one for employees, and both these adapters are under the dataset DSE company. Let's close this one. Make sure that you have saved the file and close it. The user to enter the data, so we are going to create a web form. So add, either you can add using the add new item, or you can just create from the context menu web form, and I give the name as a default and press OK. And in the design view, we'll design the form. So this form is to add the employee details, and I want this to be heading 1, so let's change this to heading 1. And we have few fields. The first one is the employee ID, which will be a text box, followed by the first name, which is also a text box, last name, which will be another text box, and we have the hire date. So for hire date, we could choose either a text box or a calendar control, but for now let me choose the text box. So user will enter the date, and we do have the salary, which will be a text box, and we have a department of the employee. And for this department, I'm going to get the departments from the department table. So let us create a drop down list. Now initially I don't have any list elements. This will be from our department table, and I'm going to have username, password, and we also have confirm password, and let me also create another one, email, which will give this email ID of the employee. And I'm going to have a button, so when user press this button, this is going to show them the add the employee details to the employee table. Let's save this one and add the in our employee, let me add the email. So to modify our define, click on the open table definition and let me add a email column here, which will be a character of 15. And let me update the script, and let's close this. And in our data we have these emails. Let's add the emails. So I'm going to call this Ali at mycompany.org and John at mycompany.org. Let's save this and refresh. Now let's go and rename the text box, our control. So let's give the ID as txt employee ID, and this is going to be text first name, and this is going to be text last name, and this is going to be text higher, and this is going to be text salary. And for this one drop down, let's create it as DDL department, and username is text uname, and password is text password, and confirm password is again text confirm password, and for the email is text email. And for the button, I'm going to give the name as btn save, and the text for this button I'm going to change it as add employee. And let's also add a label to show that employee has been successfully added. So let's add a label here. Let's make it bold for this one. So let's remove the label, and I'm going to call this as LBL message, and we want to change the colors. You can change the color to green, and we want to change the font and to make it size of the font is large. Let's save this one. Now let's try to execute this and see how it will look like in our browser. Yeah, now we don't care about the design itself. So the user is going to enter the employee ID, a name, hire date, salary, department. I want the department from our department table, and he can enter the username and password, but I don't want the password to be visible to all. Confirm password, you need to enter the same password and you need to enter a valid email ID. And when you press the add employee, the details should be added to the. So now I want to fix the password. I don't want the password to be shown to the end user. So to make this, click on the password, and in the properties of the password, under the text mode, you will see this is a password field. And same go for this, under the text mode, change this as password field. So now if someone enters a text inside the password field, it should not be visible to others. Yeah, this is what we want. We don't worry about the validation now, we'll fix it later. Now I want the departments should be displayed here from our department table, which means all these departments will be displayed here. So when they select the department, it will store the department ID in the employee table. So let's go and fix it. Select the drop down, click on this tiny arrow here and choose data source. And from the data source, we don't have any data source now, so let's start to create a new data source. And our data source is from a table adapter, which is the object. So select this and let's give a name for this object. So this is a data source department table adapter, and here it asks for the what adapter we want to choose. We have two adapters, employee and department. So in our case, we want to get the data from our department adapters, and we are going to use this method department get department data, which is a select statement that we wrote, which returns all the departments, and finish. Now here it has what is the data field to be displayed in the dropdown. So I want to display the department name, which is more meaningful than the ID. But when the user select the department name, the data I want to store is the department ID. So the value I want is department ID, but display will be the department name. I'll press OK. Now let's save this one and execute. So now you see here we have all the departments which we created in our database table, and all the department name is shown in the display. When I select any of this department, the value which stored in this list box will be department ID. Now let's go and write the code for add employee. So when user press this add employee, I want to call the insert method of the employee table adapter. So to access our employee table adapter, so let's try to create an object of employee table adapter. I will not get anything here because we need to include our data set to this. So let's include the data set. So we are going to use the data set employee company table adapters. And now if I go and type employee table adapter, yes, we have this employee table adapter. I will create an object of this ETA equals to new employee table adapter. So this one creates a object of employee table adapter, and I want to get all the values from our controls. So first thing is employee ID, which is stored in the text employee ID. Then we have the first name, which is stored under the first name, last name, which is stored into the last name, and we have this hire date, which is date time, now you see here it gives us error because text hire.text is a string type and I'm trying to save it in a date time, which is wrong. So I need to convert this string to date time. What you can do is date time dot, so let's use this parse method that is to convert the given string to date time, and I want the salary. I'm going to, this is a decimal, money. Again we need to convert the text salary, which is a string, to decimal. We have the user employee ID, first name, last name, hire date, and salary. Now the department ID, which is in our drop down list selected value. Again our selected value is a string, so I need to convert into a integer. Use int.parse to convert it to integer, and we have this username, another, and we have this password, and the final one we have is email. So let's save this one. Now I want to add all this in our employee table, so eta dot insert. So insert is a method which is created from our table adapter, and if you see, these are the different fields it's going to store: employee ID, first name, last name, hire date, department ID, salary, username, and password. But if you remember, we don't have the email because email was created after we created the table adapter. Email was the field that was created after the table adapter was created. So let's go and fix that. Let's open the table adapter and let's go and reconfigure this. And save this one. Now let's go back. Yeah, we got this employee. We just refresh it, so we will get this one. So the first parameter I'm going to pass is employee ID, first name, last name, hire date, department ID, and salary, username, password, and email. And once we have successfully insert, I want the label to have this message, employee added. And let's save this one, execute. I'm going to add new employee, salary. So the department I'm going to choose is mechanical, username, password. So I just put PASS1234 and PASS1234, and email is andy@mycompany.org, and when I press add employee, it says employee is added. Let's close this one and let's open the employee table, show table data, and you can see here Andy is been successfully added in our table. In next lesson we'll see how to do the validations for our data in the web form.